Her daughter-in-law erased her from the graduation photo, cropped, filtered, forgotten. Martha Langley, widow and silent benefactor, didn't object. She just sat in the back row, watching her grandson deliver a speech in the auditorium she rebuilt, beneath lights she paid to keep on. By morning, the donors would know her initials. By Sunday, the city would know her legacy. She'd been the backbone of their success for years. Now she was the headline. Not out of revenge, out of record correction. Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The auditorium doors hadn't even been unlocked 10 minutes when Martha stepped inside. Her heels muted against the wide-banded industrial carpet. Light from the high windows framed her silhouette as she paused, letting her eyes adjust, scanning the rows of folding chairs dressed in blue and white ribbon. She'd chosen the gray suit for today, not quite celebratory, not quite funereal, somewhere in between, neutral, respectable. The brooch at her collarbone was small and silver, shaped like a dove in flight. It had been her mother's. She moved without hurry, her handbag clutched tight under her elbow, and made her way down the side aisle. "Mrs. Langley," Martha turned. The voice was soft, familiar, but clipped. Lauren, dressed in a navy sheath dress, stood at the corner of the lobby, her smile a polished veneer stretched too thin. She walked toward Martha with brisk steps, arms crossed just under her chest as if fending off a draft. "You really didn't have to come," Lauren said, voice pitched low. "It's going to be packed." Behind her, Cameron hovered near the reception table, checking off names on a laminated list. When he looked up and spotted Martha, his mouth opened as if to speak. But it was Lauren who added, a little too quickly, "It's live-streamed if you prefer comfort." Martha held both their gazes for a beat longer than was polite. "Thank you," she said, her smile barely tugging at the corners of her mouth. "But I'd like to be here." Cameron nodded stiffly, adjusting his blazer sleeves. Martha moved past them with quiet dignity, unbothered by the chill in the air that had nothing to do with the thermostat. Back row, far right. Her seat had her name printed on a folded card, M. Langley, typed in a sans serif font, black ink on plain cardstock. No title, no mother of, just the name. She sat. The soundscape around her built gradually. The low murmur of families entering in waves, the clack of shoes, occasional bursts of laughter. Balloons bobbed above heads like misguided party thoughts. Someone dropped a program 3 rows ahead, twice. Martha didn't flinch. She sat upright but not rigid. Her hands folded in her lap. "Excuse me. Hi." A warm, chipper voice broke through the silence around her. A woman in her 40s, maybe, with tight coils pinned back and a flowing green dress, leaned over from the row ahead. "I'm sorry, you're Evans." The woman squinted, apologetic. "I feel like I've seen you at, what was that event, last winter?" "The showcase?" Martha smiled faintly. "Yes, that was me." "Thought so," the woman said, eyes lighting up. "I'm Tamra. I work in the music department. That boy has real talent, stage presence. I keep telling him, if Juilliard doesn't bite, it's their loss." Martha's smile held. "That's kind of you." Tamra leaned back into her seat just as the house lights dimmed slightly. The ceremony began with the national anthem, scratchily played by the school's brass ensemble. It felt like a prelude to something both grand and hollow. The keynote speaker, a former student turned regional congresswoman, delivered a speech peppered with cliches that made the front row beam and the back row glance discreetly at their watches. When the time came for the students to cross the stage one by one, the energy shifted. Applause started swelling and falling in waves. Martha sat still. She didn't bother with the program. She didn't need to count down. She felt it before she saw him. The auditorium lights caught the edge of his navy gown as he stepped into frame from the left side of the stage. Evan. His walk was steady, back straight. The tassel hung loose against his cheekbone before he brushed it back with a flick of his hand. And then a glance, quick, precise, toward the back. His eyes swept over the crowd with professional indifference, but for a half second, they lingered on the far right back row. Martha did not wave. She didn't even blink. He looked away, kept walking. The principal called his name. Cheers erupted from a small section 3 rows ahead. One of the cheer moms clapped so hard her bracelet snapped. Evan accepted the folder and gave a short, contained nod to the audience. No grin, no fist pump. As he exited stage left, his shoulder brushed the curtain, and still, he didn't look back. Martha exhaled, just once. Quietly, a program dropped again in the row ahead, the same woman fumbling as she whispered, "Sorry, sorry." Martha remained still, but behind her composed exterior, a whisper of something colder stirred, something that had slept too long, because for all the politeness, all the scripted civility, there had been a time they begged her not to come, and now she'd come anyway, and someone up there had noticed. The ceremony flowed on, names read, applause triggered like a reflex. Every fourth or fifth name earned a whoop or a standing ovation. The rest drifted into a polite, undifferentiated hum. Martha remained in her seat, her posture unchanged, calm, anchored. Up front, Lauren shifted. Twice. The second time, she uncrossed and recrossed her legs with a quiet sigh. She glanced toward Cameron. He glanced toward the exit. Neither turned around. Midway through the program, the MC returned to the podium. And now, we'd like to take a moment to recognize the Elwood Foundation for their continued support of Ashbrook High. Their generosity over the past 12 years has been nothing short of transformative. A short pause. Scattered applause. Tamra rose from the second row. She turned, smiling as she addressed the crowd, not with practiced poise, but genuine warmth. "I won't keep you long," she said, "but I would be remiss if I didn't personally thank the Elwood Foundation. Because of their support, we renovated this very auditorium 2 years ago. Our literacy lab, which now serves nearly 400 students a year, exists because of their funding. And of course, the scholarships. Some of the students walking this stage today," she glanced briefly toward the graduates seated stage right, "simply wouldn't be here without that help. They've never asked for recognition, but tonight they deserve it." A beat of quiet applause followed. Lauren stiffened. Her nails clicked against her clutch. Cameron leaned toward her, voice low but not low enough. "Bet it's some hedge fund guy," he muttered. "They always want attention without getting their hands dirty." Lauren didn't respond, but her jaw moved, once, just a flex. From the back row, Martha watched it all. Her expression never changed. But the silence around her was no longer empty. It was electric. She heard a soft rustle beside her. Devin, a lean man with kind eyes and a tailored jacket, leaned in close. He hadn't been there at the start. He'd arrived quietly halfway through the ceremony and taken the seat beside her without a word. "Want me to stand up?" he murmured. Martha shook her head slightly. "Not yet." Devin gave a tiny nod and leaned back again, folding his hands in his lap like a bodyguard in disguise. Up on stage, the last of the graduates had crossed. The principal returned to the mic, and the energy shifted again, lighter now, celebratory. "And finally," he said, "we'd like to invite one of our top graduates to say a few words. Evan Langley, come on up." A ripple moved through the room. Evan stepped forward from the line of students and climbed the 3 steps to the microphone. Martha sat still, though something in her shoulders pulled taut just slightly. Evan cleared his throat, both hands gripping the podium. He didn't look nervous. He didn't look excited. He looked prepared. "I want to thank everyone who's made this day possible," he began, his voice even and clear. "My teachers, my friends, the staff who stayed late and showed up early, my classmates, who challenged me and annoyed me in equal measure." A few chuckles. Evan smiled, just barely. "I also want to thank my family," he continued, "especially the grandparent who taught me to read when I was 5, even when it meant staying up late after her second job, who used flashcards from the dollar store, who told me that if I could read a sentence, I could rewrite the story." Martha didn't move, but something in her eyes flickered. A memory, maybe. A flashcard with the word window written in blue marker. Evan didn't name her. Not directly, not even close, but he didn't name anyone else either. Devin glanced at Martha again, waiting for a cue. She gave none. Applause rose, swift and loud, echoing off the walls she had paid to repaint. On stage, Evan stepped back from the mic and offered a shallow bow. A teacher reached out and shook his hand. and as he turned to leave the stage, he looked again, just a flick of the eyes toward the far back, toward the chair where she sat, and this time he held it. 2 seconds, 3, then gone. But behind the exit curtain, where no one else could see, Evan's hand curled into a fist at his side, and Martha, quiet, composed Martha, smiled. Not with pride, with precision, because the game had started. And for the first time in years, he was the one unsure who would make the next move. The reception bled into the parking lot. Clusters of families formed in loose circles, framed by folding tables and foam core signage thanking donors and staff. Someone had brought a Bluetooth speaker that warbled out a graduation playlist. Good riddance, time of your life, bleeding into unwritten. Martha stood near the edge of the crowd, her back to a service entrance, watching parents jostle to get the right angle for their photos. Evan was somewhere in the blur, flanked by classmates and camera flashes. Devin returned from a brief phone call, holding out his phone like a peace offering. Media team wants a quote, he said. Maybe something for the school website or the district newsletter. Just a few lines. Gratitude, legacy, all that. Martha gave him a long look. No. He waited, eyebrows raised, not pressing. She added more quietly. The work isn't about me. Devin nodded. I figured. But they're saying the Elwood Foundation's finally on paper. That sort of changes things. Martha's gaze drifted past him, back to the crowd. They'll forget again soon enough. Nearby, Cameron laughed too loudly. He had a red Solo cup in one hand, and a group of former classmates orbiting him like bored satellites. Some rando foundation bought a name on the program, he was saying. Probably some tech guy trying to write off guilt. Laughter. One of the guys added, At least spell the name right if you're going to sneak into the donor list. Cameron smirked. Elwood? Sounds like someone's golden retriever. None of them noticed the tall man with the calm expression standing a few feet away, hands in his pockets, listening. Devin leaned slightly toward Martha. You want me to correct them? She shook her head once. They already told on themselves. Across the lot, Lauren held her phone at arm's length and forced a wide grin. Evan stood beside her, still in his gown, but the zipper was half undone, and his mortarboard was missing. Smile, she said brightly. Just one for Facebook. Cameron leaned into the shot. Lauren snapped 3 versions. Let me see, Evan said, stepping closer. Lauren hesitated, then tilted the phone his way. He scrolled once, slowly. In the background of the second photo, just behind the picnic table and barely in frame, Martha stood talking with Tamra, her face partially turned, her gray suit distinct even in soft focus. Lauren tapped edit, pinch, crop, slide. When she handed the phone back, Martha was gone. Evan stared at the new frame. The smile slipped just slightly from his face. He said nothing. Lauren misread his silence. I'll tag you in this one. They left the parking lot in waves. Cars beeped and merged onto the feeder road, headlights flashing in the early summer dusk. Devin drove. Martha sat in the passenger seat, eyes forward. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers gently curled inward, like something holding its shape after heat. Do you ever wonder what they'd say if they knew? Devin asked, not looking away from the road. Martha didn't answer. Who kept the doors open during the shutdown? He continued. Who paid the substitute salaries when they cut staff? Who funded the entire Chromebook rollout? You're not just a line item, you're an invisible donor, Martha said softly, by choice. He glanced at her. Sure. But it's not like they're trying to find out. They've forgotten whose checkbook kept that school breathing for 3 years. Martha turned to face him now, the first flicker of steel behind her eyes. Let them keep forgetting, she said. Forgetfulness is a form of permission. Devin nodded once, the words sinking deep like a warning. They drove the next few miles in silence. Later that night, Evan sat on the edge of his bed, the program folded neatly beside his phone. He opened Facebook. The group photo was already posted. 74 likes, 5 comments, 1 tagged name. He looked at it for a long time, then clicked off his phone and turned the screen face down. The window above his desk was cracked just slightly. Crickets chirped in the dark like they had when he was 10. Studying his flashcards with a woman who made oatmeal in silence and read aloud like it was sacred. He remembered the word story. He remembered her voice saying, Don't just read it. Ask who's missing. Evan stood. He crossed to his desk and picked up a pen. Then, on the back of the graduation program, in the white space between the names and the ad for a local orthodontist, he wrote a single line. What would it look like if she stopped letting them forget? He didn't sign it. He folded the paper in half, and he left it there in plain sight. It ran in the Sunday feature, bottom half of the Metro section, above the fold. Headline: The hidden woman behind thousands of student successes. Beneath it, a black and white photo of a bronze plaque mounted on the library's south wall. The caption read simply, in dedication, for every student who felt overlooked. EF. The article opened with a few warm statistics: graduation rate increases, scholarship numbers, the renovation timeline. Then came the human touch. Quotes from a former English teacher about a mystery donor who never missed a faculty fund. A past scholarship winner who recalled opening the envelope and thinking the check was a mistake. And Devin quoted at length. His words were careful, respectful, but clear. Sometimes the person who changes the most lives is the one you never think to thank. The paper didn't name Martha, not once. But for those who knew the initials or the stories whispered in hallways, it was unmistakable. Lauren read the article over coffee, lips pressed thin as she scrolled on her tablet. The tone was too gracious to openly criticize, but the headline made her twitch. At 8:03 a.m., she sent the group text, "Well, congrats on finally getting press." Cameron didn't reply, not with a like, not with a gif, not even a reaction. Evan saw the message too. He stared at it for a long minute, then archived the chat. By early afternoon, Martha was in the garden, pruning back the hydrangeas. She wore an old button-down and a pair of clippers clipped to her belt loop. The newspaper lay folded on the porch table, unread. Devin stepped out holding a second copy. "It's clean," he said. "No leaks, no guesses. Just what we let them print." Martha didn't look up. "Good," he hesitated. "You sure about the plaque photo?" "I asked for it," she said. "It's the only quote I've ever needed." Devin unfolded the paper, smoothed it against the table's surface. "There's already talk online. Parents sharing the article, teachers connecting dots. Joyce said someone from the district office forwarded it to her this morning." At the mention of her name, Martha finally stopped pruning. "What did she say?" Devin's mouth quirked upward. "She said, 'You gave them a ladder, they used it to step on you.'" Martha straightened. "That sounds like Joyce. She's not wrong." Martha looked toward the back gate. Beyond it, the street was quiet. No cars, no footsteps. Just wind curling through the trees and the dry rustle of garden clippings underfoot. "Do you want them to come knocking now?" Devin asked. "Now that they've seen the frame around the picture?" "No," Martha said. "If they come, it should be because they're ready to ask the right question." "Which is?" She looked him square in the eye. Why they never wondered before. At Lauren's house, the group photo still sat pinned to the top of her Facebook page. 87 likes now, 9 comments, a few from distant cousins, 1 from a college roommate, none from Evan. She hovered over the post, finger twitching above the delete button, but she left it. Instead, she opened the news article again and reread the paragraph with Devin's quote. Her jaw clenched. Cameron was sprawled on the couch behind her, phone in hand. "You think it's her?" he asked. Lauren didn't turn around. "Who?" "Elwood." She let the question hang. "It doesn't matter. She got what she wanted, right? A feature spread, a little legacy moment." Lauren finally turned, eyes sharp. "You think she wanted that? A photo of a wall?" Cameron raised his hands, mock defense. "Okay, fine. She's still weird as hell." Lauren went quiet again. Her thumb tapped her thigh. Then she said low, "She always played the long game." Cameron frowned. So we need to start asking where it ends." That night, Evan sat on the front steps of his apartment, the paper folded in half beside him, the plaque photo facing up. He hadn't told his mother he'd seen the article. She hadn't brought it up. But something had shifted, something brittle in the air between them. He took out his phone and opened a new note. No title, just a blank page. He typed, "Don't just read it. Ask who's missing," then added, "Ask who stayed missing on purpose." He stared at the screen a long while, then saved the note and locked his phone. Inside, the house was still, But outside, the wind picked up, and for the first time in years he wondered, what happens when the woman in the shadows stops waiting to be asked? Martha didn't hear the knock. It was too soft, more of a polite suggestion than a demand. But Devin did. He rose from the dining table, where he'd been finalizing the grant cycle paperwork, and opened the front door without calling out. Evan stood there, hands tucked into the front pocket of his hoodie, a thin red notebook held close to his chest. "She home?" he asked. Devin stepped aside. "She's in the sunroom." Evan nodded. He didn't move for a second, just looked past the doorway into the stillness of the house. Then, slowly, he stepped in. The air inside smelled like rosemary and printer ink. Martha sat at the small table by the wide-paned windows, a mug of tea going cold beside a stack of donation reports. She didn't look up when she heard the door, but she did when she felt the quiet change. Evan walked in with the kind of slow, careful steps you take in places where you're unsure of your place. He held out the notebook, spine forward. "I think you're the reason I passed AP Lit." Martha raised her eyebrows slightly, but said nothing. She took the notebook from his hand and opened it. Inside, the first few pages were filled with tight, slanted handwriting. Reading lists, notes in the margins, underlines. Then, on a page about halfway through, she found it. Her eyes scanned the familiar sentence, circled twice in blue ink. "Books give you better exits." Below it, Evan had written, "I didn't get it at first. Now I do." Martha's fingers paused over the page. Then, gently, she closed the notebook and held it like it was warm. "Thank you," she said. He blinked. "For what?" "For keeping the pages." His phone buzzed in his pocket. Once, then again, then again. He didn't check it, just pulled it out, glanced at the screen, then flipped it face down and set it on the windowsill. Martha's eyes flicked to it. "Urgent?" He shook his head. "It's just her." Lauren. He didn't elaborate. They sat in silence for a while. The kind that wasn't heavy, just wide. "I know you didn't want attention," Evan said eventually. "Or credit." Martha leaned back slightly. "That's true. But it still matters," he said. "What you did." She nodded once. "I didn't do it for recognition. I did it so no one would have to ask for permission to matter." Evan ran a hand through his hair. "They act like I don't see, but I do." Martha's gaze sharpened, just slightly. "See what?" "How small they make you." Like a glitch in the background, he paused. Like a wrong answer on a test they already scored. The sun outside dipped behind a bank of clouds. Light softened through the glass, blurring the edges of everything. Martha looked down at the red notebook again. "You were never going to forget," she said. "No." "And now?" Evan hesitated. "Now I think maybe it's time someone else remembered too." He stood slowly, his chair legs scraping the hardwood. Martha didn't follow him out, but after he left, she opened the notebook again and touched the circled quote with her thumb like she was testing the temperature of something long buried. In the corner of Devin's home office, the Elwood Foundation's back-end CMS was open on his laptop. He stared at the About page for a long minute, then clicked Edit. Beneath the mission statement and fiscal transparency links, he added a new heading, Community Founders below that. This space honors the individuals who built the scaffolding beneath every success story we celebrate, the ones who wrote checks instead of speeches, who kept receipts instead of titles, who stayed in the background, on purpose. He hovered over the Publish button, clicked. Meanwhile, Lauren was pacing her kitchen, phone in hand. She had sent 4 texts. 2 were casual, 1 was a question, and the last was clipped and sharp. "Are you ignoring me now?" No response. She opened Evan's Instagram. No story updates. Checked Messenger. Nothing there either. She tossed her phone onto the counter and swore under her breath. Behind her, the TV was still playing the local news replay. She didn't notice until halfway through dinner that the segment on the Elwood Foundation had aired again, and that Devin's quote was longer this time. She stabbed a piece of lettuce, chewing like it owed her something. That night, Evan lay on his bed, the red notebook now tucked back into his backpack. He hadn't told Martha, but he had scanned a few pages. Just in case he needed them again, his phone buzzed once more. He didn't answer. Instead, he turned over, the window cracked again. just enough to let in the sound of the world turning. And somewhere in the quiet, a truth settled into place like a key finally fitting the lock. The exits she gave him were never escapes. They were maps. The envelope was cream-colored and hand-addressed. Thick paper, the kind that carried weight even before it was opened. Tamra's office sent it directly, no label, no, to the family of. Just one name, written in ink with care. Martha Langley. Inside, an invitation to the school's upcoming Benefactors and Educators Luncheon. A formal recognition of the Elwood Foundation's contribution to the district, hosted in the newly renovated library, the same one with her plaque on the wall. The RSVP slip was tucked inside a folded linen card. A line for guests, a box to check if she'd prefer a vegetarian option. It was a simple gesture, but someone had noticed. The envelope arrived at the house 3 days before Devon's version. Lauren found it first. It came in the middle of her weekly scan through the mail pile, wedged between a property tax reminder and a catalog she didn't remember subscribing to. Her fingers paused on the name. Her thumb slid under the flap. She read it all, twice. Then she tucked the invitation back inside and slid the envelope into the bottom drawer of the kitchen desk, under expired coupons and an old PTA calendar. She didn't mention it. Not to Evan, not to Cameron, not to anyone. Devon received the backup version on Friday, sent to the Foundation's listed address, per Tamra's assistant's insistence. He held the envelope up as he stepped into the sunroom. Look what found its way home. Martha glanced up from her laptop. The backup? He nodded, dropping it onto the table. Lauren ever mentioned the first? No. Martha didn't even reach for it. She already knew what it said. Devon took a seat across from her. Want me to reply? Yes. 2 guests. He blinked. You sure? Martha finally looked up, a small, dry smile playing at the corners of her mouth. They set the table. I'll take my seat. Cameron kicked the front door shut with his heel and dropped a plastic bag full of takeout containers on the counter. They're doing another thing about the foundation, he said, almost to himself, phone glowing in his other hand. Didn't we just do this parade? Lauren stood at the kitchen sink, slicing cucumbers into perfect discs. What thing? Library event. Some luncheon for donors and teachers. She kept slicing. Didn't hear about it. Cameron shrugged, already losing interest. Bet it's going to be a self-congratulatory snooze fest. Devon giving another speech about invisible pillars or whatever. Lauren didn't reply, but she sliced the next cucumber harder than necessary. Evan found out through the school newsletter. He read the blurb twice. The words were casual. Celebration, gratitude, renewed partnerships, no guest list, no specifics. But the subtext was clear. He called Devon. Is she going? Devon's voice was calm, unsurprised. You want the truth? Yes. She's confirmed, quietly, but yes. Evan hung up and sat with that knowledge for a full minute. Then he walked outside, paced the front porch, came back in, and texted Martha directly. Evan, are you really coming? The dots appeared almost instantly. Martha, I'll be there, but I won't be loud. Evan stared at the message. Then he smiled, just slightly, because that had always been her way. She didn't ring bells, she didn't knock down doors. She just showed up. And that somehow had always been the loudest part. 2 nights before the luncheon, Lauren opened the bottom drawer to look for a pen. The envelope was still there. The paper had curled slightly at the edges. She stared at it for a long time. Then, slowly, she took it out. She reread the name, the invitation, the RSVP line. Her thumb hovered over the guest box, still unchecked. She set it on the desk and walked away. She didn't tell Evan, didn't say why her stomach twisted when she passed the newly remodeled library that afternoon, didn't explain the sudden flush of heat when she saw the poster for the event on the school's glass doors. Because deep down, she knew something was shifting. Not publicly, not loudly, but from underneath, like roots changing direction in the soil. And she wasn't sure if she wanted to stop it, or pull it out by the root. The library didn't look like the same room. Tables had been cleared and reconfigured into crisp, linen-covered rounds. Each centerpiece a stack of gently worn books tied with navy ribbon. The new shelving gleamed. Soft jazz played from hidden speakers. Tamra stood near the front podium, greeting each guest with the warmth of a teacher who never forgot names. Martha entered through the side door. No fanfare, no escort. Just Devin beside her, wearing a slate suit and the exact expression of a man who knew when to speak, and when silence was the sharper blade. They took their seats at table 4, close enough to the front to be noticed, but not centered. Across the room, Lauren was already there. She wore pale blue and held a sparkling water with 2 lemon slices she hadn't asked for. A cluster of PTA donors gathered loosely around her like moths, circling polite manufactured light. Helped coordinate the matching gifts during the renovation, she was saying. The board leaned on me a lot in the early phases. There wasn't even a digital ledger until I stepped in. The woman across from her nodded, wide-eyed. Oh, that's wonderful. You've been involved since the beginning, Lauren smiled. Tilted her head, deeply. A voice came from behind her, calm, measured. We've never had a role like that. Lauren turned. Devin stood just behind her, hands in his pockets. Expression unreadable. He added, no board, no ledger access. And matching gifts were processed through the district's finance department, independently. Lauren froze for just a half-second too long. Someone at the table cleared their throat. Cameron appeared at her side, as if on cue. Babe, we're gonna be late to the seating. Lauren smiled thinly, eyes still locked on Devin. Of course. She didn't look at the donor group again. The luncheon moved fast. Introductions, a performance by the choir, polite laughter during a light roast from one of the senior teachers. Then Tamra stepped to the podium. The chatter softened to silence. Her smile was warm, but her posture commanded attention. I know we've all had our share of thanks today, parents, partners, teachers, funders, but I'd like to close by honoring someone who never asked for recognition. There was a subtle shift in the room. Chairs stilled, glasses lowered. Tamra continued. She's not on the board. She never sat in the front row. She declined every photo op we offered. But half this room wouldn't be here, literally, if not for her. She gestured gently toward the back. Please join me in recognizing Martha Langley, the woman who never asked for applause and built half this school while no one was looking. There was a heartbeat of pause. Then the clapping started. Not thunderous, but real, rising, widening. Devin clapped first, Tamra next, then the left side of the room, then surprisingly, the principal. Cameron looked stunned. His hands hovered awkwardly before he gave 2 sharp claps, like trying to get ketchup out of a bottle. Lauren didn't move. Evan did. He stood, and he clapped the loudest. The kind of clapping that didn't chase approval but gave it. Martha didn't stand. She didn't wave. She just nodded. Once, then leaned toward her water glass, voice quiet but clear to those nearest. I never needed a title, just results. Devin smiled into his napkin. The applause faded, but not entirely. It left a residue, one that hung in the air, unavoidable. Lauren's expression never cracked, but her knuckles were white around her glass stem. After the event, as chairs scraped and thank you bags were handed out at the door, Tamra caught Martha gently by the elbow. Some of them are going to need time to process what they just heard. Martha raised an eyebrow. Because it wasn't new? Tamra smiled. Because it was true. Across the room, Evan lingered behind the dessert table, folding and unfolding a napkin. Lauren stood near the door, talking to no one. Cameron was already outside. Devin appeared beside Martha again, coat folded over one arm. Do we go? He asked. Martha glanced back one more time, toward the plaque on the wall, toward the people rearranging themselves into new mental maps. She turned. Let them decide what they were clapping for, and walked out. Lauren didn't notice it right away. It was only when a junior donor forwarded her the link with a chipper, "Loved seeing you in action at the luncheon. Just found this," that she clicked through the Elwood Foundation's website. The homepage had been updated, sleek, clean, reorganized. The new Community Founders tab glowed gently at the top, nestled between our mission and impact reports. She clicked it. There, beneath a sepia-toned photo of the renovated library and a quote about silent scaffolding, was a section that hadn't existed 2 weeks ago. No family titles, no Langley family legacy, no mention of her. And worse, beneath the plain black heading, it said, Founder, Martha Langley Foundation. Administrator, Devin Hart. No advisory board, no honorary contributors, no mention of early involvement or matching gift coordination. Her fingers hovered over her trackpad. She took a screenshot, then opened her email. Subject: Website accuracy and representation to Devin Yellwood Foundation. .org. CC Martha Yellwood Foundation.org. Devin: I was reviewing the updated foundation site this morning and noticed some discrepancies under the Community Founders section. I'd like to request a review of how my early involvement and logistical support were omitted. Given the number of years I've participated in school fundraising efforts, particularly during the auditorium campaign, I'm surprised there wasn't some consultation. Please advise on next steps to correct the public record. Lauren Langley. She stared at it, then clicked send. Devin read the email on his phone while refilling the printer toner in the foundation's back office. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he opened a document from the board folder, copied 2 paragraphs, and began a reply. Subject: Website accuracy and representation. To LorenLangleyHome.net. CC Martha Yellwood Foundation.org. Lauren, thank you for reaching out. As outlined in our foundation bylaws, VPUT 3, adopted 2019, family members or affiliated individuals may not claim roles, responsibilities, or titles within the foundation structure without formal board appointment and written verification. As you were not an officer, contractor, or listed volunteer during the renovation or funding years covered, there is no omission to correct. All updates to the public site reflect board-approved language. Regards, Devin Hart Foundation Administrator. He added no flourish, no closing warmth, just facts, straight as lumber. Martha read it quietly from her end of the thread. She made no edits, no comments. She simply replied, received. No further input. Cameron leaned against the fridge that evening, a sports drink in one hand, his phone in the other. Lauren was pacing in socks, agitated but trying to keep her voice measured. They removed me, she said, nearly laughing. Like I never existed. Like I wasn't standing there, writing emails, making calls. Cameron didn't look up from his phone. What's the big deal? It's just a website. She turned, sharp. It's not just a website. It's visibility. It's history. Cameron finally looked up. It's Devin. He probably didn't want to name names after the whole clapping fiasco. Lauren's jaw tightened. I built this school's network. I bled into it. And she just sits there and nods like none of it touched her? Cameron shrugged. Honestly, it always kind of felt like it didn't. Devin closed his laptop late that night, the glow of the foundation's admin panel still lingering in his vision. Martha had said little after the email chain. She rarely needed to, but before heading out, he found something wrapped in wax paper on the kitchen counter. A lemon cake, dense and warm, still fragrant. The note taped to it read, "For the staff, no names needed. M." He smiled. He'd already cleared space in the fridge. Evan sat in the upstairs hallway, back against the wall outside his bedroom. He had heard the pacing, the email drafts read aloud. The word erased used 3 times in 4 minutes. He said nothing, didn't text, didn't post. He just sat with it, with the sound of someone panicking over not being given something they'd once refused to earn. Downstairs, the ice machine kicked on. His parents had stopped talking, but something still rang loud. And it wasn't the email, it was the removal. The clean, quiet edit that didn't just change the story. It reminded them who was never supposed to be in it to begin with. Evan arrived at the foundation office just after 9. Devin handed him a keycard and a login slip. Nothing ceremonial, no speech, just a nod and a gesture toward the open desk across from the copier. Start with donor intake forms, Devin said. Then scholarship letters. Most of them are templated. You'll figure it out. Evan didn't hesitate. He sat down, opened the laptop, and began. There was something about the silence in the office. Soft, useful, focused. No fake productivity, no posturing. Just clean systems and a fridge that always had iced tea. By lunchtime, he had processed 17 donation entries. printed thank you letters for 8, and flagged 3 scholarship applications for review. He found one from a name he recognized, Ms. Delia Marsh, his old piano teacher. Evan blinked, then scrolled. The scholarship record showed 5 years of assistance, rent stipends, supply reimbursements, a grant for a community recital program that had never made the local news. All signed, EF, anonymous endorsement. He leaned back in his chair. He had thought he knew what the foundation did. He had thought it was just buildings and hardware and clean banners with phrases like transformational access. But here it was, quiet, continuous. People, not names, not titles. Lauren found out 2 days later. She didn't hear it from Evan. She heard it from Heather, the former PTA president, who saw him leaving the building in business casual clothes. That night at dinner, she barely waited for him to sit. "You're working there now?" Evan nodded. "Just a summer internship. Nothing full-time yet." "You didn't mention that in your Stanford deferral packet." Evan calmly picked up his fork. "Because I didn't defer." Silence collapsed over the table like a shattering vase. Lauren's voice dropped into a sharper register. "You're throwing away a Stanford acceptance for a desk?" Cameron didn't speak. His fork paused midair, as if waiting to see which direction this would go. Evan set down his napkin. "No, I'm choosing the only place that ever saw me." Lauren's jaw worked. "Saw you. We've given you everything. You gave me a name," he said, voice low. "They gave me a purpose." Lauren blinked. "You're being dramatic." Cameron tried to chuckle, lightening the mood. "Hey, maybe it's just a phase. Summer internship, looks good on LinkedIn." Then he hops back into the brand. Evan turned to him. "There is no brand. There never was." Cameron frowned. "Come on, you don't have to cut ties. You could still work with us. Pitch campaigns, keep the Langley line alive. Maybe even link the family to the foundation officially." "Stop," Evan said. It was quiet, but final. Lauren stood, napkin dropping to the floor. "I'm not having this argument again." "Neither am I," Evan replied. He left his plate untouched, walked upstairs without looking back. The next morning, Martha waited in the sunroom with 2 cups of coffee and a folder in her lap. Evan walked in, laptop bag slung over one shoulder. She handed him the coffee. "No congratulations?" he asked. "No need," she said. "You didn't do it to be congratulated." He smiled. "Fair." She opened the folder. Board prep materials, budgets, proposals, meeting agenda templates. "You'll shadow Devin during the quarterly call," she said. Quietly, no speaking unless asked, no notes unless for yourself. Evan took the folder. "Got it." Martha's tone softened. "You don't owe anyone a story yet. But someday someone will ask how it started." Evan looked at her. "And I'll tell them it wasn't supposed to be mine. That's how I knew it had to be." Back at the Langley house, Cameron was in the garage, pacing with his phone to his ear. "Look, I just think there's a synergy play here," he said. "You've got the family name. He's the heir apparent. We rebrand the foundation presence, put a face to the Elwood name, connect it to the next generation. You know, modern legacy building." On the other end, Devin let the silence hang for a moment. Then, "Cameron." "Yeah?" "It's not a pitch deck. It's a record." Cameron blinked. "What?" "It's not branding. It's history. And the more you try to wrap your hands around it, the faster it slips away." Click, call ended. Cameron stared at his phone, suddenly realizing no one had been negotiating. The PDF was buried 3 pages deep in a public filing. Devin hadn't been looking for it. Elias had. As the Foundation's retained legal advisor, Elias checked quarterly for any external references to the Elwood name. Mostly, it was harmless. Media quotes, donor acknowledgement errors, the occasional high school intern forgetting to anonymize a grant recipient. But this was different. The form was part of a company registration Cameron had filed with the State Business Bureau for his boutique consulting firm. Under Community Engagement and Strategic Affiliations, he had listed Elwood Foundation, long-standing partnership via family initiatives. Devin sat across from Elias in the boardroom, the document glowing on a screen between them. "That's IRS exposure," Elias said. "False representation of a non-profit tie, especially one with federal filings. That's not branding, that's misappropriation." Devin nodded slowly. "You want to go to litigation?" "No, Not yet. They both turned as footsteps entered the room. Martha walked in, her reading glasses folded in one hand. She scanned the document, her expression unmoved. Elias said, "We can file immediately. I just need board authorization." Martha leaned forward. "Not yet," she turned to Devin. "Let's start simple. Notify his board." The letter went out by courier. Plain envelope, thick paper. Header: Notice of Unauthorized Representation, Elwood Foundation. The language was direct. The final paragraph read, "No individual, regardless of familial relation, may reference the Elwood Foundation for personal, commercial, or reputational gain without prior written consent. Continued misrepresentation may result in formal legal action and regulatory notification." Lauren's call came less than 6 hours later. Martha was pruning the back rose bushes when the phone buzzed. She didn't rush to answer it. She stepped inside, wiped her gloves, and answered on speaker. Lauren didn't waste time. "You're ruining us." Martha's tone didn't change. "I think you mean, I'm correcting the record. You went behind our backs." Martha blinked slowly. "Your backs were turned long before I moved. This affects our whole image. Cameron's firm. His clients see this. Evan sees this. What are you trying to prove?" "I'm not proving anything," Martha said. "I'm just removing what never belonged." The silence on the other end was sharp. Then, "Do you have any idea what you're doing?" "Yes," Martha said. For once, she ended the call. That afternoon, the Elwood Foundation issued a formal cease and desist. It was posted under notices on the foundation website and mailed directly to Cameron's business address. The wording was unemotional, exact. By Friday, Cameron's firm lost 2 sponsorship deals. A freelance PR coordinator quietly exited the group Slack. Their About page was stripped of its community tab. Devin passed Martha in the hallway that evening, legal folders tucked under his arm. "Should I prep for escalation?" Martha paused. "Not yet. Let them respond. Silence can be louder than a countersuit." Devin gave a dry smile. "You're kind of chess." Martha looked out the window. "No, just spring cleaning." Evan found out from Tamra. She forwarded the public notice with a single line. "He really thought no one was watching?" Evan stared at the screen. He wasn't surprised, but something in him settled, like watching a line finally being drawn where a smudge had lived too long. He didn't reply to Tamra. He didn't text his parents. But that night, before shutting down the foundation office, he updated the draft intern handbook. Under conflicts of interest, he added, "Any attempt to leverage the foundation's name for personal gain, misrepresentation, or third-party branding will result in immediate removal. Impact before image." Every time, he didn't sign it, but Devin would know where it came from. Back at the Langley house, Lauren paced the kitchen while Cameron reread the cease and desist for the 5th time. He finally muttered, "It's just a form. Everyone pads their affiliations. That's normal." Lauren whirled. "She isn't everyone. She's overreacting." Lauren's eyes narrowed. "No, she's winning." She crossed to the fridge, yanked it open, then slammed it shut again. It wasn't even her name on the foundation when it started. You remember that? It was a filing number, a P.O. box. She didn't even want the spotlight. Cameron looked up. "And now?" Lauren didn't answer, because she already knew. Now Martha didn't need a spotlight. She was the foundation. And the foundation had a boundary. The draft lived on a Google Doc for 6 weeks before Devin even commented. Evan had started it during lunch breaks, between donor audits and scholarship reviews. He called it the Elwood Code, but only to himself. By the time it reached Devin's inbox, it was 12 pages. Tight, focused, no fluff. It opened with a simple header, Student Ethics and Representation Charter, drafted by intern cohort. The language was precise, not angry, not reactive, just clear. One section read, "Family affiliation does not constitute foundation authority. No relative, biological, or legal may invoke the Elwood Foundation for professional leverage or personal narrative without express written consent." Another, all partners, staff, and student interns must declare outside affiliations that could be perceived as exploitative or conflicting. Devin read it twice, then sent it to Elias. 3 days later, the board voted. Unanimous. Evan received the confirmation via internal memo. Approved and adopted. Effective immediately. Tamra featured it in the next school bulletin. Her quote ran in bold beneath the headline, "We teach integrity by practicing it. The Elwood Code is more than policy. It's real-world character." Parents forwarded the newsletter to their networks. A civics teacher printed it and taped it to his whiteboard. Martha folded her copy and slipped it into a drawer. She didn't frame it, but that night, when Evan came by with grant applications to review, she offered him the good coffee. No words, no commentary. Just the ceramic mug with the heavy handle. The kind you use when something finally fits. Lauren found out 2 weeks later. She was finalizing her keynote slides for a regional fundraising summit when the event coordinator emailed. Due to recent concerns around organizational alignment and messaging clarity, we're pausing speaker confirmations pending board review. Thank you for understanding. She read it twice, then checked the summit page. Her name was gone. Her speaking topic, narrative ownership in modern philanthropy, had been replaced with a panel on nonprofit transparency. She threw her phone across the couch. Cameron looked up from his laptop. What was that? Nothing, she snapped. Then, softer. Everything. Evan didn't gloat. He didn't tell Tamra, or Martha, or Devin. But when he walked past the framed ethics code, now displayed near the front desk, he did pause. For just a moment, not for pride, but for peace. The scholarship letter arrived in a plain envelope. He wasn't expecting it. He hadn't even reapplied. But inside was a full-year award, housing, books, and a stipend. No cover note, just the signature line, anonymous donor match. Elwood Foundation endorsed. He turned it over twice, then set it down beside the red notebook. That evening, Evan walked into the sunroom with the envelope in hand. Martha was there already, reading with her glasses pushed to the bridge of her nose. "I didn't apply for anything this round," he said. She closed the book but didn't look surprised. "Not everything needs an application," she said. "Some things just need consistency." He sat across from her. "I keep thinking you should have had to say no to them. Loudly, like slam the table. Draw the line, kind of no." Martha shook her head. "I never had to say no." She set her book aside. "I just had to say enough." Evan looked down at the envelope. "It feels final." "It's not." "Then what is it?" She smiled. "It's foundation." Outside, the sun was going down. Soft, warm, steady. The kind of light that doesn't announce itself, but changes everything it touches. Devin closed the door to his office, took a sip of cold coffee, and opened the document titled Founder Spotlight, Martha Langley. The staff had drafted it 3 times already. The first version had been too formal, the second too sentimental. But this one felt close. The opening line read, "For over a decade, Martha Langley quietly shaped the lives of students across this district, without ever asking to be seen." It listed the library renovations, the literacy lab, the emergency funding during COVID, and the internship program's code of ethics. It didn't mention her family, not once, not Evan, not Lauren, not Cameron, just her. It ended with a quote Devin remembered scribbling on a post-it years ago after one of their late-night budget meetings. "Legacy isn't the story they tell about you. It's the system that runs better after you've left." He emailed it to her at 6:04 p.m. The subject line was short. Profile draft. 2 hours later, she replied. Approved. No edits. M. Joyce read the post at her kitchen counter the next morning, still in her slippers, still clutching the chipped mug she always said she'd replace and never did. She read it twice, then a third time, slower. Her eyes caught on one sentence. She didn't just build programs, she built dignity into the infrastructure. She put the mug down, half full. Tears came without drama. When her husband walked in, she said, "You remember that woman I told you about? The one who funded our textbook grant before the district ever noticed we needed it?" He nodded. "She has a name now," Joyce whispered, "and it's not anyone else's." The foundation posted the profile during Donor Week. No fanfare, just a clean tile on their homepage, a short blurb on social, and a cross-post to the school district's site. Within 24 hours, it had been shared 400 times. A PTA chapter in Vermont reposted it as an example of anonymous integrity in action. A local journalist wrote a short opinion piece, "The Power of People Who Don't Interrupt." Tamra forwarded it to every department chair with a single subject line, "Required reading." At Cameron's company, the blowback was less poetic. By midweek, a client forwarded the profile to their communications director with a quiet question. "Isn't this the foundation you referenced in Q3 decks?" The message reached Cameron's inbox with a bright red, urgent flag. By Thursday, 3 partner calls had been rescheduled, 1 outright canceled. He issued a flat press statement. "While our early efforts in philanthropic alignment were sincere, we respect the current leadership and mission of the Elwood Foundation. Our company remains committed to ethical representation." No apology, no correction, just distance. Lauren read the draft before it went out and said, "You sound like a bot." Cameron didn't answer, because at this point, he had nothing left to say. Martha didn't respond to the press statement, didn't reference the article, didn't forward the coverage. She logged into the foundation's backend, authorized another $15,000 grant to the school library, and marked it. Instructional materials, plus bilingual inventory, refresh. No name attached. No public announcement. Just the same quiet care. Evan saw the profile for the first time while waiting for the printer to warm up. He stood in the copy room, watching the old inkjet sputter to life. When Devin forwarded the link with no message, Evan clicked, scrolled, read. By the time he reached the quote at the bottom, "It's the system that runs better after you've left," he didn't even realize the printer had stopped. He took the page off the tray and tucked it under his arm without looking at it. Back at his desk, he opened a new tab and searched something he hadn't dared to before. "Can you start a foundation before age 25? That evening, Martha sat at the kitchen table, cutting lemons for another cake. Devin stood nearby, helping fold grant letters. He said, "It's everywhere. Everyone's reading it." She nodded. "That's nice. You sure you don't want us to list your honors, alumni networks, that old advisory board seat?" Martha placed another lemon slice into the bowl. "They didn't build anything," Devin smiled. "Neither did the people you left out." She looked up. "Exactly." Back at the Langley house, Lauren sat in her car in the driveway, phone in hand. The profile was still open. She had read it 5 times. She kept waiting for her name, a mention, a footnote, a trace. Nothing. She closed the tab. And this time, she didn't reopen it. Evan wrote the pitch in the same notebook that once held his AP Lit quotes. The margins were cleaner now, his handwriting tighter. He had grown into the weight of words. He titled the fund "The Quiet Thread." Subheader: "For first-gen students with non-traditional guardians." Because love builds legacy, even without a nameplate. He didn't mention Martha, didn't need to, but every line in the proposal felt like her voice under his. The fund would offer small, renewable scholarships, just enough for application fees, work-study gaps, and laptop repairs. Nothing flashy, nothing Instagrammable, just the things that meant the difference between almost and actually. Devin read the draft without making a single red mark. At the bottom, he added, "Let's bring this to the board Thursday. I'll stand beside it, but not in front." Evan replied with one word, "Understood." Martha sat in her sunroom that evening, legs tucked under her as she sipped her evening tea. Evan handed her the printed pitch, 3-hole punched and clipped. He said, "I don't need you to fund it." She raised one brow. "I just need your eyes on it." Martha read it quietly. Her thumb traced the subheader once, then again. When she finished, she set it down and looked at him for a long time. "You can lead the pitch," she said. "And if the vote's close, Devin and I will hold the edge." Evan hesitated. "It won't feel like I did it alone if you seed it." Martha shook her head. "If you did it alone, it wouldn't exist." He nodded. "I'll take the match, quietly." The board approved it with a unanimous show of hands. The announcement post was simple, introducing The Quiet Thread, a new fund supporting students raised by someone other than who the forms expected. No founder photo, no ribbon cutting. The seed amount was listed as private donor contribution. Only Devin, Martha, and the foundation accountant knew where it came from. And that was enough. Lauren wasn't invited to the rollout meeting. She found out the day after, when a donor group she once moderated posted congratulations and tagged the Elwood Foundation's page, without tagging her. She refreshed the post. Twice. Nothing changed. She clicked through to the events calendar. Her access badge no longer worked for board previews. Her RSVP permissions had quietly expired. She sent a message to Evan that night. "This isn't how we fix things." He read it. Didn't reply, didn't block her, just moved on. Later that week, Tamra stood at the front of the library with a small group of student interns. She held the new program brochure in one hand. "This," she said, "isn't just a scholarship. It's a signal." The students nodded. One asked, "Who started it?" Tamra smiled. "A student who didn't think his story fit." Until someone showed him that wasn't a flaw. It was a foundation. Martha, seated off to the side, said nothing. She just folded the extra brochures into her bag. They'd restock the high school counselor's office in the morning. Quietly, of course. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon. Martha was in the pantry sorting dry goods for the school food drive when her phone lit up with a name she hadn't seen in weeks. Cameron Langley. She let it ring twice, then answered. "Hello?" His voice was carefully measured, almost practiced. "Martha." She waited. "You've made your point," he said, with the brittle tone of someone trying to sound gracious while drowning. Loud and clear, Martha leaned against the pantry shelf. "Cameron, I wasn't making a point." Silence. "I was restoring a structure." Another pause. "Look," he said, "I know we've had different philosophies about visibility, about legacy, but at the end of the day, family still means something. Blood still means something." Martha exhaled, not sharply, just a long, level breath. "You're not calling about family," his voice faltered. "I'm calling to ask if you'd consider naming me in the final estate documents. Even just a trustee designation, nothing major. Just a line of succession, something formal." Martha closed the pantry door. "You already named yourself everywhere else," he said. "Try making that last." The line went quiet. Not dropped, just drained. Cameron's voice, when it returned, was barely audible. "This isn't what I imagined for the end of all this." Martha sat at the kitchen table. "That's the problem. You imagined the ending, but never helped build the beginning." She didn't wait for him to reply. She hung up. No anger, no tears, just completion. Joyce dropped off a stack of history books later that evening, donations from a retiring teacher. She stepped into the foyer, scanned Martha's face once, and said, "Did he call?" Martha nodded. Joyce set the books down. "And?" "I answered," Martha said. Joyce waited. Then, gently, "You okay?" Martha shrugged. He didn't yell, he didn't grovel, just floated there like someone who forgot how gravity works. Joyce gave a dry smile. "You didn't bury him." "No, you just stopped carrying him." Martha didn't speak for a long time. Then she said, "It's strange how light the truth feels once it's finally left your hands." Joyce nodded. "You handed it off. Now let them figure out what it weighs." Evan returned home late from a donor Q&A session. He set his satchel on the table and noticed the familiar calm of the house. Lamplight in the hallway, faint scent of lemon still lingering in the kitchen. He didn't ask if they'd spoken. He just said, "Everything quiet today?" Martha nodded. "Mostly." Evan grabbed a glass of water, leaned against the counter. "I had 3 different interns ask who you were today. Not in the legacy way, in the current tense way." Martha's smile was soft. "What did you say?" "I said you built the scaffolding. Now we're just adding rooms." She looked down at the coaster under her mug. "You're doing more than that." He took a sip. "Still, every beam holds." She nodded once. A pause passed between them, comfortable now. Then Evan said, "Did he ask for anything?" "Yes." Evan didn't press. He didn't need to. "I didn't give it to him," Martha said. Evan looked at her for a long moment. "Good. Not because he wanted to win, but because he no longer needed to lose for them." Back at Cameron's house, the lights were still on well past midnight. He sat at the dining table with a legal pad in front of him. Every page was blank. Lauren hovered in the doorway. "Did you hear anything back?" Cameron shook his head. "She said no?" "She didn't say no," Cameron muttered. "She said enough." Lauren folded her arms. "You always assumed she'd forget eventually." "She never forgets," he said, staring at the blank pad. She just stops reminding you. Lauren looked down at him. So now what? Cameron didn't answer, because for the first time, he couldn't see a version of the future that still had his name in it. The auditorium looked different this time. No balloons, no generic music piped through dented speakers, just rows of carefully arranged chairs, a soft blue banner reading, "The Quiet Thread, First Annual Recognition Ceremony." The stage was clean, the lighting warm, the podium unadorned, except for a single placard etched with the Elwood Foundation logo. Evan stood off stage, flipping through a stack of note cards he wouldn't end up using. His jacket was pressed, no tassel this time, just a small pin on his lapel that read Cohort 1. Martha sat in the front row, her silver brooch gleaming against a navy dress. To her right, Tamra, elegant in a floral wrap, wiping at the corner of her eye before the lights dimmed. To her left, Devin, hands folded, expression calm, but unmistakably proud. When the ceremony began, it moved like a well-oiled watch. 3 students read excerpts from their scholarship applications. A counselor spoke about changing the story behind the paperwork. One of the cafeteria staff was honored for spotting food insecurity patterns others missed. Then Evan stepped onto the stage. He stood behind the mic, let the room settle, and said simply, "This fun began with a library card, and someone who believed I should have one." Silence. Then soft, steady applause that swelled like a wave, earned, not expected. He nodded once, stepped back. He didn't need to say Martha's name, because everyone already knew who he meant. Lauren was not present. Her name had not been listed on any RSVP roll. No one asked where she was. And that in itself was the answer. Cameron stood in the back, arms folded tight across his chest. He hadn't taken a seat, hadn't brought a guest. He watched the entire ceremony through narrowed eyes, jaw tense. When Evan finished his speech, Cameron didn't clap. He turned and slipped out before the final name was called. No one followed. After the ceremony, students and staff gathered by the refreshment tables. Laughter rang in soft pockets. The smell of lemon cake, Martha's, of course, mingled with paper cups of cider. Evan found Martha beneath the plaque, listing the fund's founding contributors. Her name was still absent, but when he approached, she looked up with that quiet smile. "You didn't use your note cards," she said. "Didn't need them," she nodded. "That's when you know it's yours." He looked around the room. "You okay?" Martha took in the scene, the banners, the students, the plaque. The applause that still seemed to live in the air. "It's not that they forgot me," she said. "It's that I remembered myself." Outside, twilight had begun to edge the parking lot in gold and lavender. As the final guests filtered out, Martha remained seated in the front row, letting the quiet settle back into the space. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Evan approached from behind. "Is that what I think it is?" She handed it to him, typed at the top, "Speech draft, graduation day, never delivered." He read the first line aloud. "At my grandson's graduation, my son and daughter-in-law said that I should have stayed home." He paused, looked at her. Her voice was calm. "They learned too late that the ceremony was hosted by my foundation." Evan smiled, not bitter, just aware. He folded the paper and handed it back. "No one needed to hear it then," he said. "They see it now." Martha placed the paper back in her bag, zipped it shut, then rose and walked out, without needing to be invited.